What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is the only sports podcast. That's right, the only sports podcast. I'm Will. That's Casino over there. How we doing today, Casino?
Pretty good. Got some ups and downs. Found a screw in my tire. So that was the down. Getting a good go get that fixed today. Luckily, they're going to be able to just patch it. It's in a good spot. So that was the downer, but the upper is my cholesterol is downer.
Bam.
That makes sense.
It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
You feeling any better? You sound better.
I do sound better. I do feel better. Finally, it only took, this is day 10, so only took 10 days. I'm assuming by, I'm
Could
going to
make a
say,
movie out of that.
yeah, 10 days 10 days later. But no, I'm assuming by Monday I should be good. So by Tuesday show, hopefully I'll be back to sounding normal. But what we have in store today, Casino, is we have to do our playoff picks, talk about the playoff games. We also have our power rankings for the wild card division. But before we get into that, there was a college football game last
Yeah, we
night.
tried to do a show yesterday, just didn't work out. Work got involved, etc., etc.
Yeah, so we're doing it today instead, but let's talk about the game last night, Thursday night. Notre Dame wins 27-24 against Penn State. I am happy that Penn State is out. I like this Notre Dame team. Thoughts on this game, Casino?
First is Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Anyway, no, but yeah, I really like this team. I know very early on in the season we were really worried about them, but man, did they pick it up quick. I love their coach, Marcus Freeman. I think is outstanding, and I was worried about this game because the big news coming before the game started, and you and I both picked Notre Dame. You picked them because you hate Penn State. I picked them because my grandpa is a big Notre Dame fan. So that's why we picked the reasons we picked them. But the big thing going into this game was they had the flu. There was a big flu outbreak, and
I can
that
relate. I can relate.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this has been a really bad season, flu season for everybody. Everybody I know, literally, probably 10 people that I talked to said that they're not sick. Everybody else I know got sick,
Yeah.
which is insane. But anyway, so that made the odds go into Penn State's favor, and they were favored to win that game. And it looked like it was going to happen early on in that game. I was really worried. It didn't look great. But in the end, the Fighting Irish came back and they took care of it. It was also a little worried, with Riley Leonard for Notre Dame getting knocked out and having to go into the tent before halftime. But his backup came in, went 6 for 7, not bad. So this is where I thought the game was done because the rushing that Penn State had was just outstanding. Notre Dame couldn't do anything in the first half, but luckily for Notre Dame's defense, stepped up. There we go. And they held them to only 10 points and made it a one possession game going into half. That was huge because immediately as soon as Notre Dame got the ball to start second half, they got a beautiful pass. Leonard came back in and he had a beautiful pass over the top to tie it. And man, going into the fourth was outstanding. Where do you want to go from there with that?
Yeah, so they were trailing 10-0 in the first half, like you said, trailing 10-7 going into halftime. They win it on a kick, in the last, it says 7 seconds here. So, man, could all the narratives about this college football playoff and the blowouts and the team selected, all that will be erased because the national championship is going to be Notre Dame versus either Ohio State or Texas.
Yeah.
That's like the NCAA's wet dream right there.
Oh,
That
outstanding.
is,
And you have a great narrative with Notre Dame going in. Under Marcus Freeman, they've had an outstanding record so he came in as the head coach back in 2021. He was 0-1, but you put that with an asterisk. He came in right at the end of that game or that year. And then 2022, he was 9-4, 2023, 10-3. And then this year, he broke a record for Notre Dame with the most wins for Notre Dame, 13-1. And not only did he do that, this season, after beating Penn State, they have 7 wins against top 20. They're 7-0 against top 25 teams this season.
Yeah.
That's insane that they have played that many. So yeah, they beat the Texas A&M, they beat Louisville, Navy, Army, Indiana, and Georgia, and then now Penn State. This team is primed to win the national championship, and I love every second. Look what they did to Penn State. Penn
Well,
State
well,
with a flu
also,
outbreak.
yeah,
Like, come on.
the crazy stat coming out of this game is not one Penn State wide receiver caught
See,
a pass
that's
in this
that's what I
game.
was gonna say
That
next, dude.
is insane.
That's insane. Yeah,
There
they're
was
the
6 receptions to a tight end, I think
Yep.
1 more to a
I'm
tight
s
end,
I'm
and then
so glad that you're bringing this up. Yeah.
4 receptions to running backs.
Dude,
So, that Notre
shut
Dame
them
defense is
out.
for real.
They're
Yeah.
for real. And honestly, if I was Texas or Ohio State, regardless whoever wins that game, I would be worried, very worried to play Notre Dame. Again, I just said they're 7-0 against top 25 teams this year. And yes, some of them were weak top 25 teams, but you have they beat Georgia, they beat Penn State. Those are
They
great
didn't
teams.
beat Georgia, they annihilated
Yeah, they
Georgia
annihilated Georgia, and then they beat Penn State. Like, this was their Michael Jordan flu game, and look what they did. They crushed it.
from a
Um,
team standpoint, you're right.
it was outstanding. And you gotta sorry, I didn't mean to make you laugh.
No, that's
Uh,
good.
but you gotta feel bad for the Penn State quarterback, Drew Alar, because that pick, dude, that was his only interception of the game, and it was just at the worst time. He
Yeah.
did throw one earlier, and I think it should have stood. The pass interference was kind of a bang bang play, but I could see it going either way.
I don't get why that one was so controversial. Like, that was the thing that was online afterwards, and it was like, you can legitimately make a case for this one going either way.
Yeah, no,
It's
it was
not
it was
like
either way. It was a bang bang play, and they called it what they called it, and then that's what it is. That's fine. You
yeah, and
know
then if they call it what they call it, and then they review it, and there's nothing to evidence to turn it over, that's literally what the rule was made for. Like,
exactly.
that's
No,
exactly what it
perfect.
should be.
That was perfect. But yeah, that late interception. I talked to my grandpa about this. I gave him a call. He's 90. He's 90 years old, and he absolutely was just like, yeah, I could barely stay in my seat. And during that interception, he was like, it was a gift from God. It- he is, like I said, he's 90, almost 91 years old. He's full blown. He's half Irish. His name's O'Callahan. Like, super Catholic. So Notre Dame is his team. Like that's his football team.
Yeah.
And so for them to pull that off late, I could just imagine him sitting at his house watching this game at 90 and almost 91 years old, just freaking out. Oh, it's great. It's great.
Casino, your camera's going all fuzzy.
Oh
Uh,
no.
but that's not the only college football playoff game. The other one we have coming tonight, it'll probably be happening or starting right around the time we post
There we
this
go.
show, but it is Ohio State, Texas in the Cotton Bowl tonight. ESPN has it projected right now that Ohio State has a 67% chance to win this game. And I kind of think that's right on the money. I don't trust Quinn Ewers. I think Ohio State's a better team. I think that Michigan loss, they might look back on that and be like, thank God for that, because that's really the one that like kickstarted our season. You're muted.
Darn it. Um, that's fair. But I still think Texas is going to take this.
Ooh, you
Well,
think
here's
an
the thing.
upset?
I am
You
going to pick the
wanna you wanna put that in the picks?
no,
Ohio State,
no, no,
Texas.
no, 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 no. But I am going to go Texas because we talked about all season that Texas, and especially early on, Texas is the best team and nobody can touch them. And I'm going to stand by that. I
Well,
like
that
Ohio.
was no, that's what we said about Oregon, and then
Well, we said
Ohio
about
State
Texas too.
annoyed them or annihilated them.
That's
Yeah,
fair. That's fair. And Ohio State, great team, great team. But I have an inkling that Texas is going to get it done. Um, Regardless, I really think, and I think we talked about this early on, before the playoffs started, that I did pick Notre Dame to win the whole thing,
yeah, you
and
did.
so I regardless, especially after watching last night's game, whoever wins tonight, I don't think they have much of a chance against Notre Dame, especially if that defense plays the way they play last night, just lights out. I mean, I say lights out, they still let 21 points. But again, that locker room is riddled with the flu. You do that. Oh, this is gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
Yeah. The two, what is it, Texas losses were they lost to Georgia, which
Fair.
again, we saw Notre Dame annihilate. And then they also lost to Georgia again in the SEC championship. So the only team they've lost to this season is Georgia. Those are their two losses. Ohio State, the only loss is obviously the 3-point loss to Michigan. And then earlier in the season, the 1-point loss to Oregon that they then got their revenge on. So I just think Oregon again, or not Oregon, Ohio State. I just think whatever happened in that Michigan game, since then they won 42-17 and 41-21 against Oregon. But also, unlike the NFL playoffs, every single game I've almost picked in this college football playoff, I've gotten wrong. So do not listen to me on college football. Do not listen to me on my picks because
I'm doing
yeah,
pretty okay. I'm doing pretty okay. Let's go
I,
Texas.
yeah, but I'll tell you what, like I said earlier, Ohio State, Notre Dame, or Texas Notre Dame, that's going to sell a lot of tickets. That's going to have a lot of ad revenue. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that. So the real winner is college football, especially when there was so much just talking shit about the 12 teams that were selected and the blowing out and did they really pick the right teams. Well, now, especially after Oregon lost, you can't say they didn't pick the two right teams, because if this was what, a couple of years ago, the teams that would be in it are Oregon and Georgia. That would have been the championship. Both those teams didn't even make it to the semifinals. So if they would have done the top four like they did last year, it would have been Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas. And then obviously it still can be Notre Dame, Texas. But still, if it ends up being Ohio State, Notre Dame, that is literally a matchup for the national championship we couldn't have gotten in the other formats. So I think honestly, if it is Ohio State, Notre Dame over Ohio State, or I'm sorry, over Notre Dame, Texas, I think that's a win for the 12-team playoff. If it is Notre Dame, Texas, who finished 3-4, then you can make the argument like, why do we need 12 teams? It's still the same 4 teams we would have let in. But if it's Ohio State, Notre Dame, that is a big win for the 12-team format.
Right. And it is, but to counter what you said right there, why do we need everything else if it's going to be the same 4 teams? Because then it gives other teams throughout the season something to play for. This was my favorite college football season of all time. I got to it's not just because UNLV had their best season of all time. It was this season, every game mattered. You're watching it like a hawk. You're like, okay, well, if this team beats this team, then this team can come in, this and that. It was fun. It's fun.
I think honestly, and I know so many people have talked shit about it, I've always been for it since the beginning. I think the inclusion of NIL right around the time of the 12-team playoff, I think it's honestly a perfect combination. I know the transfer portal is something I feel like we need to fix as a
Definitely need to
college
fix.
football structure, but NIL and the 12-team playoffs, I think it's a match made in heaven. I think it really makes, like you're saying, more competition, more competitors. I mean, you had Arizona State, an OT win away from potentially, being in the Final Four. Like that
Yeah,
never would have happened.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And that
So
was fun. That was fun
yeah.
to watch.
But let's move, Casino, from college football to the NFL, where we
To the
are
pros.
talking about the wild card weekend. And let's start with the Saturday game. This is also, I don't know if you listen to Tuesday's show or not, Casino, but we have to
You
go
think
over
I
the
you think I
picks.
actually listen to our shows?
Yeah. I don't know if you were paying attention or not, but so the final regular season picks,
Oh, I have to relive this. Yeah,
you
because
have
we
to
did this
relive it
yesterday.
again.
Gosh darn
Yeah.
it.
I won the final week 10-7, which means I win the overall season 174-172. First time in what, 2 previous years. This was the 3rd year. You won the first 2 years. I won this year. But I have won the playoff picks every season. So maybe this is where your odds change. So we are restarting the numbering with the postseason. I'll tell you what, we don't need to pick a blowout loss or an upset loss, but you can add it on to a game, and if you pick that correctly, you'll get two. So there you go.
Okay.
First up, let's start at the Saturday games. There's two of them. The first one being a Houston Texans staple. Every single year, the Houston Texans have been in the playoffs. They have played the first Saturday afternoon game. So it's a tradition as old as time. Uh, Los Angeles Chargers, 11-6 at the Houston Texans. 10-7. This is a 4-5 matchup in the AFC. Who you got in this one, Casino?
I am going Chargers. They're going to go in and take care of business against the Texans. And I know LA Chargers and everything going on in LA with the fires right now, it might
Oh,
it might
this game is being played in Texas, but the Monday night game that was going to be played in LA has officially been moved to Arizona.
right.
So just, yeah.
Right. No, I'm saying that, but as just a mental aspect of it, this could rattle a little bit of those players going into the game, but I don't think it's going to. I think, especially with the LA Charge, LA Chargers using to be the San Diego Chargers, it's a
I
little
still
little
miss
ways
that
away.
stadium. I used
Huh?
to love that. I used to love that stadium, Qualcomm Stadium in
Yeah.
San Diego, where it had the flags around top or whatever. That used to be my favorite NFL stadium. And instead, they moved it to LA, and now it's just a stadium.
That's fair. But I am going to be picking the Chargers. The Chargers are favored by 3 in this game, and I think that's totally fair. The over-under is only 42.5. You and I both agree that we're going to take the under on this one. We think this is going to be a low-scoring game. The
Yes.
Chargers are going to take care of business on the defensive side and not let the Texans score all that much. And then the Chargers, they do what they do. They don't put up massive numbers outside of some outlier games, but like what
Yeah.
they did to my team. But anyway,
uh yeah, I think I said on the TikTok, this has 16-10 written all over it.
yeah, and I
If
think
this
that's totally
is
fair.
if this is a shootout and all of a sudden both these teams that have kind of struggled offensively this year are all of a sudden putting up 30 points, then you can rightfully comment in our comment section that we don't know ball.
Well, I mean, I don't
Because
know at all. People tell me all the time. So
yeah. But also underrated player of the season is Justin Herbert.
yeah,
Finished this season 0.1 away from a 66% completion percentage, 3,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Very Nick Foles-esque when he had that 27 and what? It was 27-2?
something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
27-2 season in 2013. So shout out to Justin
So
Herbert.
yeah, some of the big things to watch here though in this game. You do have J.K. Dobbins is nursing an ankle injury, so that's something to watch. And then also Gus Edwards was a little limited, so they might be a little low on that running game. Also, with that being said, going to Justin Herbert, this could be his first playoff win. So we'll see how he can do this. This is going to be his second postseason start, but I think with having Harbaugh there, this is going to be able to work. So I think he gets his first playoff win because Harbaugh's the coach and he's going to get it figured out. And no matter how much I like CJ Stroud and honestly the Texans, I like them a lot, especially Joe Mixon. He's a very well seasoned playoff running back. I know it sounds like I'm going for the Texans here. I'm not. I'm still going to go for the Chargers, but those are things that could cause concern for the Chargers and things that could go well for the Texans here. But I still have the Chargers, and I think 16-10 is damn near spot on.
So he has one game in his career in the playoffs, but I just found this out. Do you want to guess what Justin Herbert's regular season record is as a starting quarterback? Just
Go
take a
for it.
wild guess.
I don't even have it. Just tell me.
He is 33-34. Doesn't it feel like he wins a lot more than he does? He
And
has one
and that,
more
and,
loss
but
than
that's
wins.
crazy. That's crazy. And you know what? You got to chalk that up to the previous coach, GM. The whole hierarchy of
Yeah.
that he was under because he's a good quarterback. I'm glad you finally came around on that. He's a good quarterback. He just
Yeah.
needed the right system, the right coach.
Well, yeah, and he might not be having the flashiest season, but I think this season has been his most impressive just because it finally feels like there was remember like when it was the debate where it was like Brady, Manning, and then Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers was like winning all the MVPs, but then nobody would ever say he's the best
because that's
quarterback
what
in the
matters to
league.
him.
Well, but yeah, but that was the argument was that he was playing great individual football and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were playing like winning football. Right. And then even with Peyton Manning, there was a decade of his career where everybody was like, can this guy even win a playoff game? But he was still like the statistical anomaly. I really feel like Justin Herbert went from statistically great, where all the football nerds like love him and glaze him nonstop about how he's like a top 3 quarterback only behind Mahomes and Josh Allen. And this year felt like the first time he put up good stats, but he was playing more winning football than like Aaron Rodgers MVP football. Does that
Yeah,
make sense? You go
totally
the
fair.
point I'm trying to make?
Oh yeah,
Uh, but when we deep dive into these teams, Casino, the Los Angeles Chargers 20th in total offense against the Texans, who are 22nd, 11th in the league in total defense, 6th in the league in total defense with the Texans, which their defense is great. It just never feels like it never feels
it's gonna
like
win
they
them games.
yeah, it kind of just feels like the definition of a bend don't break defense where they don't really I don't feel like they're a playmaking defense. They kind of just always make it so they're in the game, right? And then the Texans offense kind of stalls out and you look at all their losses. I mean, they 2 weeks ago they scored 2 points against the Ravens. So,
That
I
was a
it's
great safety.
yeah. But then the Chargers offense and the Texans offense, very similar, very close. Would you rather have Joe Mixon and Cam Akers or Dobbins and Edwards? Because I love Joe Mixon, but I think the running style that Harbaugh employs,
I would take the latter.
yeah,
Again, just got to keep an eye on that because those two are dealing with some injury. And
that's
then,
true.
but Joe Mixon has, I think it's seven. It said 7 seasons in the postseason or something like that, or seven
Yeah.
games or whatever. So he's seasoned when it comes to that. So yeah. Anyway, so who I got Chargers. Who do you got?
Yeah, I got Chargers as well. Again, I think it's going to be 16-10. Chargers squeak it out. I feel like it's going to be one of those games where you look at the box score at the end and you're like, wow, it was that close. And it's just going to feel like the Chargers, controlling the clock, controlling just the flow of the game and kind of just winning as a run it down their throat, kind of pound the rock type of style. So again, and we praise Justin Herbert, but CJ Stroud in his sophomore season, 63% completion percentage, 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I would say definition of a sophomore slump. So yeah, let's move on, Casino, from well, actually, any last thoughts on this game, or can we
Nope,
move on
none
to
at
the next?
all.
All right. So we move from that game on to the next Saturday game, which is the AFC North divisional clash. The third time these two teams are meeting this year. The 6th seed in the AFC Steelers at the 3rd seed in the AFC Ravens. The Steelers have to go to Baltimore for this one, Casino. Who you pick it in this one?
Ravens Steelers. You want an ice cream smoothie?
Oh, I would
Okay, I'm
also
not
like one
making
of
an ice
those.
cream smoothie because your brother is asleep right now and we don't have any ice cream. I'm gonna go Ravens. It does scare me a bit that that Zay Flowers is out.
Yes, and that's confirmed. He will
Yes,
not be in this game. Yeah. So the first when these two teams played in week 11, the Steelers, that was that really weird game where it was 16-18. Steelers win. It was all field goals. Nobody scored a touchdown. Ravens couldn't put it in the end zone. And then all of a sudden, they play in week 16 a couple days before Christmas. Ravens go into Pittsburgh and I'm sorry, the Pittsburgh Steelers come into Baltimore and just get
Just look at
rolled 34-17. And now we have that same scenario potentially, because I believe the line on this game is a 10-point swing, right? Or it's you're on mute. It is
9.5 currently. Sorry, I
but
was
I
taking care of my
believe
daughter.
when we talked about this yesterday, I think it was 10.5. So I
Yeah.
believe it's already been bet down a full point. We're dealing with children on both sides over here. This is why we record
Oh,
on Thursdays.
Thursdays.
But
Um,
yeah,
uh,
thoughts on this game, Casino? Do you think it's going to be a Steelers victory by 2 points, or you think what's more likely, a repeat of the first game where it was a 2-point swing, or a repeat of the last game where it was a blowout?
I think it's going to be a blowout. I think the Ravens are going to take care of business. I know historically the Steelers have the Ravens number, but I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think with Derrick Henry in to help out Lamar Jackson, this is going to open up this offense more going into the playoffs. And I think Lamar Jackson can make a legitimate run with the Ravens to the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl, with Derrick Henry helping on out. So, with that being said, I am going to go Ravens, and I'm going to go Ravens probably by 10 points, right around where it's at. I don't think they're going to mess around, and they're not going to let the Steelers hang around. Plus, I don't like how Russell Wilson's been playing as of late.
Yeah.
And no matter what TJ Watt can do, I don't think that he's going to be able to do enough against Henry and Lamar Jackson, who, in my opinion, should have won the MVP, same as you.
Yeah, I agree.
Fun fact, this is only on Prime Video. Go
This
fuck off.
one is only I hate when they do that, especially now with playoff games. Remember last year they had this
So every other game is fine. It's CBS or Paramount Plus, Fox, NBC, Peacock, ESPN, ABC, ESPN Plus. So you have some really good options outside of the only two would be the straight up Fox game with the Eagles, Packers, or the Prime Video game with the Ravens, Steelers.
You know what's a great middleman for this? Why does Fox not team up with Prime Video? Fox doesn't have a streaming service that I'm aware of. Or if they do, I believe it's just for
absolutely
news.
love it because like the CBS games, I get on Paramount Plus, and I have Paramount because I don't have cable. The straight up Fox ones, I'm screwed. I can't watch it. I got to watch it on Red Zone or whatever during the weekend. And then the NBC games, I get to watch on Peacock, and ESPN, I get to watch on ESPN Plus. So they do a good job outside of literally Fox and Prime. They need to figure it out. Just marry.
No, they do. I know. And that honestly seems like the perfect mix, because it's like you don't have a streaming service. Amazon doesn't have a cable channel. Like you got your peanut butter and my chocolate. It's a perfect combination. But
That's that Family Guy reference. I didn't remember that one. You got my peanut butter and my chocolate. You got your chocolate and my peanut butter.
But also, if we as the people who talk about sports have to give Sam Darnold like the right amount of shit for not performing as well when the division was on the line, we also have to give that same amount of vitriol to Russell Wilson in a game they needed against the Bengals, where he puts up just abysmal numbers.
Well, it didn't
in a must-win game.
No, it didn't matter because the Ravens played beforehand and the Ravens won.
Yeah, so but if you're still going to start your starters,
because it's still for seeding wise, it was still for seeding, but they weren't able to win the division.
But that's what I'm saying. If you're starting your starters especially against the worst defense in the league, arguably with the Bengals, and you go 17 for 31, 148 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, and your offense only puts up 17 points. Now, again, I know at the end of that game that Russell Wilson had an absolute dime to George Pickens, and George Pickens, again, we talked about it the week after, just like laid out for it in the weirdest way we've ever seen somebody try to make a catch. That was just, I'll still watch that play and don't understand what happened, but
he's no Puka Nacua.
Yeah, the bet.
My daughter's all excited now.
Yeah.
Okay, Nakua.
We're talking, tell her to stay tuned for Vikings Rams preview. But we look at the by the numbers tape for the Steelers Ravens. Ravens, I mean, at one point they were being talked about with the Bengals as having the worst defense in the league. They finish the season as the 10th ranked defense. So not only now do you have the number one offense in the league, including the number one rushing attack, obviously with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, you have the number 7th in the league passing attack and the number 10 defense. I think people are sleeping on how much better this Ravens team is and has been for the last like month and a half.
Oh, I totally agree. They're starting to hit their stride defensively, and that was their only worry. So,
Yeah.
you know,
And also, you look at the MVP numbers. I mean, Deshaun Jackson, 66% completion percentage, 30 yards away from 4,200 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That is, again,
who'd
I
you
saw
say?
Lamar Jackson,
Oh,
41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And then Derrick Henry, 80 yards away from having 2,000 rushing yards on the season and 16 touchdowns. So every idiot who talks about sports before the season, that was just like, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley aren't going to make any difference. And us on this podcast, we're both like, how can they both not make their good teams better? Like, it just was
right.
such a obvious take, and everybody tried to, do like they're washed, they're going to be nothing. Well,
You know
both
what's
of them had 2,000 yards basically.
Man, I
Like,
really wish Joe Burrow made the playoffs because he would have been my MVP. He's less than 100 yards shy of he's first in yards. He's 4,918 yards, 43 touchdowns, 9 interceptions with a QBR of 75. Oh, I
but
so
uh,
good.
again, I also don't, if we're looking at this objectively, and I know we already did this on the TikTok, but I don't think we did it on this show. If we look at it objectively, I don't know how you can objectively say Josh Allen, like, take out the where Lamar Jackson has won it previously. If you're just starting blank slate and just going by this season,
Mhm.
stats wise, it's Lamar Jackson. Head to head, Lamar Jackson absolutely annihilated the Bills. And in rushing yards, passing yards, touchdowns, he's got it all, and he has less turnovers.
Yeah,
So by what metric is Josh Allen the MVP over Lamar Jackson? It's such a weird, but again, it's just Josh Allen because Lamar Jackson has already won it too many times and done nothing in the playoffs. Like,
right.
that's the bias of it. But
4 more games. Let's hit them.
yeah, in this game, I'm also picking the Ravens. I think it will be a much closer blowout to how it was a couple weeks ago than it will be the 2-point game where nobody scores a touchdown, especially because I feel like a month ago, a month and a half ago, you can see a clear delineation from the Ravens going up and the
Was that
Steelers
your word
just
of the
free
day?
falling. Yes, my word of the day, toilet paper, right there, coming in handy.
Obviously, it wasn't day.
Yeah, that's tomorrow, ironically. But we're both picking the Ravens on that one, both picking the Chargers on the 2 Saturday games. Let's move to the Sunday games, Casino, where we have 10 a.m. on good old fashioned CBS. The Broncos at the Ravens. The Broncos the Broncos
Bills.
at the Bills. The
Man, you were high on
seventh
the Ravens.
the 7th seed Broncos in the AFC versus the 2 seed Bills in the AFC. You smelling an upset in this one, Casino? Because
No.
I'll tell you what, I'm starting to see a lot of like Broncos upset talk.
No, I could totally see it. I mean, I can see it happening, but I'm not going to go that way. They have the Buffalo Bills at 8.5. I think that is way too high.
This should be a 3-4 point game.
I
Like,
would say 4. That's where
yeah.
I would put the line. I would put the line at 4, just to screw with the betters, you know. Anyway, but the Bills at home, I think they're still going to get it done against the Broncos, but this game is going to be a lot closer than I think people think it's going to be. Well, again, we're starting to hear a lot more talk now of an upset alert, but of what the line is, where the bets are, that I really do think that the Bills are going to struggle a little bit against the Broncos, especially early on, and then the Bills will turn it on late as they typically do. But again, Sean Payton, not a bad coach, no matter how much we hate him, no matter how much we dislike the guy for, the whole targeting scandal from back in the day. I don't like him as a coach, but he's a good coach, and this is going to be
Yeah.
really tricky for the Buffalo Bills to navigate. But I think where the Bills are going to have the upper hand compared to what they've had in the previous years is they never had a good rushing game. Cook is playing outstanding right now. Cook would one dare say cooking. So
Boo.
I said
Boo.
one would dare to say cooking. But I think Cook is playing really good, and I think that complements Josh Allen a lot more now.
Yeah.
I know Amari Cooper is dealing with some in and out injury stuff, but that's okay. I still like this team. I still think they're going to get it done against the Broncos.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, Bo Nix is good quarterback. I mean, every single one of these quarterbacks from last year's draft is really good. But I just, again, first time in the playoffs, I think Josh Allen's going to get it done.
Yeah, I just for some reason, and I've kind of felt this way all season, where I watch the Bills play, and again, you'll watch them play games like against the Rams or against the Ravens, as we just talked about, and you'll be like, there's something off here, right? Like so many times during this season would we watch Texans games and just be like, there is something seriously wrong here. But with the Bills, and then they still make it to the playoffs. With the Bills, it was like they're good, but they're not great, and they just have these weird games and they blow out bad teams, which they should. But then again, uh when it gets to that Kansas City game, it's like, oh, they beat the Kansas City on Josh Allen doing like something super, and you're like, that's what we expect from Josh Allen. Then they go a bye week, the next week they play the 49ers, blow them out. So you're like, okay, maybe the Bills have finally like figured it out, turned it on, and are going to the Super Bowl. Then they play 3 games in a row where it's a 2-point loss to the Rams, where they give up 44 points to the Rams. They play at Detroit Lions, where they give up 42 points to the Lions. And again, they win that game, which is an impressive victory considering the Lions are probably the best team, at least obviously record wise, in the NFC. But then they go to New England, are playing or no, I'm sorry, they play New England at home, which is even worse, and it's a 3-point game against a team that until the last week of the season had the number 1 pick in the draft. So it's just, this team has been so hot or cold. And then again, they play a 7-point game and lose, but that's with their backups to that same Patriots team, and then blow out the Jets previously. So the last month and a half, 2 months of this season have just been give up 40 points back to back, 2 blowouts, 2 close games, and then yeah, 1 game where you're kind of just sitting everybody out because you already locked it up. So, and then again, the week before that was they beat the best team in the league and give the undefeated Chiefs their first loss of the season. So in terms of roller coaster of emotions, I think the perfect end to that roller coaster would just be like an upset loss to the Broncos, because I feel like if you paint the picture of the Bills season and then they lose to the Broncos in the first round, you're kind of like, you could have seen that coming. And I think that's why there's so many people picking the Broncos to upset the Bills. But I just think the Bills, the games they shouldn't have won, they won. The games they shouldn't lose, they lose. So that kind of, to me, gives credence to they shouldn't lose this game by any metric. And
So
I'm picking the Broncos in an
that's
upset.
fine.
That's my upset pick of the week. I think the consensus has swayed me a little. And again, I just think it's because when the Bills are going against the Giants, they like step up and just wipe the floor with them, right? Outside of that weird Ravens game. But when they played the Chiefs, when they played the Lions, it was like best team in the AFC, best team in the NFC, and just dog walked them both, right? But then they'll play your Patriots, they'll play the Dolphins, they'll play
They sat all their players for the Patriot game, and
No,
the
no, I mean
Patriots.
the other one where it was a 3-point game. That one was weird. And then also they play that Rams team that was like a third in their division at that point, and like maybe out of the playoffs, and then all of a sudden they're giving up 40 points to them. So by all metrics, the Bills should blow out the Broncos, and they probably should. But that hasn't been the story of the Bills season. The story of the Bills season has been weird games here and there. This feels like a weird game, and I'm picking the Broncos in an upset like 22, maybe 28-24. That's my guess. That's my guess. And I am 100% willing to be wrong on that.
That's
But
fine.
yeah, you look at the Broncos defense, 7th in the league. You look at the Bills defense, 17th in the league. And then the Bills offense, 10th in total offense, 9th in the league in rushing, 9th in the league in passing. But again, I want to see Ravens Chiefs and Bills Chiefs as much as anybody, but I've learned, especially doing this podcast, we don't get things we want in sports. So we're not we're going to get a Broncos Chiefs second round game where the Chiefs just annihilate them. And then it's like, oh, the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl, and then they will. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen.
I don't know. The Broncos were a legitimate field goal away from taking down the Chiefs. So
I honestly, I think if the Broncos played them a third time, I don't know if I would pick them to win. I probably wouldn't, but the confidence that Broncos team would have to have going into Arrowhead after losing one game by 3 points and winning the second one by 38. I mean, I don't care if it's backups. I don't care if it's third string. You still beat the Chiefs in a blowout. Like, that's got to count for something. So, especially just confidence wise. But let's move on to that one. You're picking the Bills. I'm going the upset, and that's obviously my upset pick of the week. I'm going for Broncos.
you said we could pick an upset or a blowout, right?
Or you can pick both. You can pick both for all I care. Next up, Casino. My Philadelphia Eagles and the number 2 seed
Well, then
in the
I'm gonna officially
NFC.
put down as because I don't have an upset. I was going to, but I'll explain why I don't. But I'm gonna pick Ravens blowing out the Steelers.
Ooh, okay. The next game we are talking about, my number 2 Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC, the number 2 seed, playing the Green Bay Packers, the number 7 seed in the NFC in Philadelphia. Who you got in this one, Casino?
This is where I hear most of the upset alert
Yeah.
is Packers Eagles, and I'm not gonna buy it. I'm not gonna buy it. The Packers are a good team. Their defense is outstanding. However, the Eagles are just too damn good. They're just too damn good. And it might be a really close game. And I think the -5.5 is pretty fair, but pretty fair point here. But man, I am going to stick with the Eagles because you have Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, who were both dealing with close to the MVPs. Saquon still finishing third. Yeah.
And if it wasn't a quarterback,
my neighbor's calling me. I got to answer. So you continue.
yeah, and also if it wasn't a only quarterback award, Saquon Barkley would probably win. But again, I've also, much like Casino said, heard all the talks about the Packers upset over the Eagles, much like the Broncos over the Bills. At least with the Broncos, you can make the case where it's like, oh, well, the Broncos have a better defense than the Bills, so they're better on half the side of the ball. Like, you can make a case, defense wins championships and all this kind of stuff.
That's fair.
When it comes to Packers Eagles, name something the Packers do better than the Eagles.
Yeah, there's nothing.
Because they don't do any of it. And also, or people will say like, well, Jordan Love's a better passer than Jalen Hurts, which might be true.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with it.
But even if it is true, you still have the added mobility of Jalen Hurts, which, in my opinion, makes him a better quarterback, especially in the playoffs, because now he's a dual threat quarterback.
Right. And talking about Jordan Love, he's still a little banged up from the previous game. So we'll see how that plays on out.
Well,
Um,
also, so is Jordan Reed. So
and
their
so is
number
Jordan Reed.
one pass
Yes.
option and their quarterback are banged up.
I mean, and we
Hurts has
know that
been,
Hurts coming back from his concussion. He hasn't played, so that's a little iffy and weary. But he doesn't have to play outstanding because he could still give the ball off to Saquon Barkley, and Barkley can basically win him this game. And
yeah.
you get Jalen Hurts out there and just get some reps in, kind of situation. So, uh, I yes, the Packers defense is young and good, and I like them a lot, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop Saquon Barkley for an entire game. There'll be a couple that Saquon breaks off that's going to be the game changers. So I think the 5.5 is pretty spot on. I think it's going to be a close game. I do like the Packers a lot, but they're going to do what they do all season long, where they are this close to beating the good teams, but they just can't get it done because the other teams are just better.
Yeah, every Packers loss this season, they lost by 5 points week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. They lost by 3 points in week 4 to the Vikings. They beat the Rams in week 5, which is the only playoff team they've beaten all season. And then they they also beat the Houston Texans by 2. So the two teams they beat were the Rams and the Texans. They lost by 10 in week 9 to the Lions. They lost by 3 points in week 14 to that same Lions team. And then they lost by 2 points against the Vikings in week 17. So they are what? They lost every division game, or they won one division game in the NFC North because they split with the Bears.
Yeah,
They
and they
lost
could have lost all
twice.
of them. They could have
Yeah.
lost all of them because
Oh,
that first one they barely won against the Bears.
yeah, the first Bears game they won by 1 point. So they were potentially almost winless in their own division.
Which is insane, and they still finished 11-6.
Well,
What?
also they have not, their last win against a playoff team was week 7. And that was all the way back in October. So they have not beat a good team since October. It is now January. They have not beaten a team since 2024 Casino. And I know we're only 10 days into the new year, but I still had to
Again,
throw that in.
they're such a good team, but they just can't beat the elite. So I know I was saying the Chargers are the best team that can't win a Super Bowl. The Packers are probably the best team that just can't win the Super Bowl because they can't beat one of those top 4 teams.
The Super Bowl of two teams that can't win the Super Bowl in these playoffs would probably be Packers versus Chargers in the NFC and AFC.
That would be great. That'd be a great game.
If that
Tight
is
game.
the Super Bowl, we get partial credit for mentioning that as a matchup right here. But yeah, I think again, the question mark going into this game is but it's been more talked about where it's the health of the two quarterbacks, but everybody just seems to just be brushing the Love injury aside and hyper focusing on the Jalen Hurts one.
And that's
Even
fine. Hyper
though,
focus on the Jalen Hurts one. Guess what? Jordan Love does not have Saquon Barkley.
well, he also, again, if he's missing his wide receiver, their wide receiver group is already thin as it is because it's filled with guys who on most teams are the second or third option outside of Jordan Reed.
Right.
So
And and with that being said, again, we love Josh Jacobs. We do. I think Josh Jacobs is having an outstanding season. Everything goes through Josh Jacobs, I think, more than Love. You've mentioned that before, and I agree with you. But that Josh Jacobs is not Saquon Barkley. It's just what it is. So the Eagles are going to get it done. I think we can move on to the next game. We're
yeah,
both picking the Eagles.
I agree. And I also am agreeing with you where I think the Jalen Hurts injury aspect of it has been blown way out of proportion. Again, he was injured
It's because
3
he hasn't
weeks
played for a
ago.
while. That's why.
Yeah. So I think he's out of concussion protocol and has been for a while, and they were kind of just babying him to make sure he was good to go for the playoffs. So I think, again, if you're doing prop bets or anything like that, this is a heavy Saquon Barkley game and probably a heavy AJ Brown and Devontae Smith just on quick slants and then them going to the house. Because obviously you don't want Hurts taking shots. But I think this will be, again, very similar to their week 1 game, which is a close game that, again, leads to the Eagles pulling away at the end. I think, again, this is going to be a rough first half of the game and a second half that will be pretty much all Eagles till they get the victory. So Yeah. The next game we have, Casino, is the 6 seed in the NFC Commanders at the 3 seed Buccaneers. I think on this first week matchup, maybe the most interesting game because I think this is really the potential only game, maybe compared to the next one, where you can make good faith arguments about both teams kind of being equals, even though I think the Vikings are way better, but still. I think this is the game of all of the wild card matchups. You can make the case for that. You can make the case that can either convince me it's Commanders or convince me Buccaneers. I don't think you can really do that with any other games. I think Vikings Rams is eerily similar to Broncos Bills, where you can kind of just be like, look at the recent bias history and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to Commanders Bills, or I'm sorry, Commanders Bucks, who you got in this one, Casino? Because this one really feels like it could go either way.
Yeah, this one is close. This was almost an upset pick for me. Um, but I'm going to go with the Baker Mayfield. And I think partially it is because I just really wanted him in the playoffs so much. And now that the Commanders and Jalen Daniels made it, sorry. Yeah, I'm going to go Bucks. I'm sorry, I got to deal with this.
Yeah, when I think it comes down to is both these teams are hot. Both these quarterbacks have been on fire the last month of the season. Obviously, that Jaden Daniels kind of a surgence really started at that Eagles game where he had 5 touchdowns, game-winning drive, and then since then he's been lights out. Same as with this team has been. But the Buccaneers, I'm telling you what, the Buccaneers might have the most impressive resume in the league in terms of their victories because again, you're only as good as who you play, and you only play the teams on your schedule. So the teams the Bucks have beat through this regular season, they
Yeah.
beat the Commanders at the beginning of the season, 37-20. Then the other victories on their list that are impressive with teams over 500 records are they beat the Lions, the Eagles, and the Chargers. And remember that Chargers game, they completely annihilated them.
Yeah.
So they have already beat the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed in the NFC and then completely annihilated the 5th seed in the AFC.
Yeah.
So
I'm going Bucks. All those things that you said. Um, I'm happy the Commanders and Jaden Daniels most likely going to win the Rookie of the Year. Those were my hot takes to start the season.
you said this team would make the playoffs and that Jaden Daniels would win Rookie of the
Yeah.
Year. So
Check.
you called it. Yeah.
Check. I love
Props.
it. But I am still going to pick the Bucks. This is going to be a good game. It's going to be a fun game, especially Jaden Daniels has played really well against good defenses, and the Bucks defense is not that great. So I can see him putting up a lot of numbers. This is going to be a shootout, in my opinion. The over or under in this game is 50.5 with
Woo.
Tampa Bay -3. And you know what? I say it's going to be higher. I say it's going to be higher. And I'm just gonna go. I like playoff Baker. He's done well. You told me a stat on Baker. I don't know if you've already said it while I was away, but
No.
you said it was like 10 touchdowns and 2 interceptions or something like that in his playoff career, which is great. And I'm gonna take him all day. I'm gonna ride that train because the Bucks are hot and cold. But man, when they're hot, they hot. Because they even almost beat you said they beat the number 1 seed, number 2 seed. They almost also beat
The Chiefs.
the
Yeah.
Chiefs, which
On
is the
Monday
number
night.
1 seed, like,
Yeah.
in that so,
And
yeah,
honestly, if they
that
would
came
have
down to
got,
it came down to the coin flip. If they woulda
yeah.
got it, I really feel like the Bucks woulda won that game.
Yeah. And Baker Mayfield, so he has a 2-2 record in the playoffs with both the Browns and the Buccaneers. But in his career, in his 4 playoff games, he
Browns,
has
can't believe that.
100.4 passer rating with 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So,
Give me playoff Baker. Let's
yeah.
go.
And
Let's go.
also, again, and I will harp on this much more on our next game, but there is a clear delineage and clear difference between a regular season quarterback and a playoff quarterback. So before I see you in the playoffs, I can't just assume you're going to play the same way in the regular season that you play in the postseason. So for rookie quarterbacks, their record when they first start, like their first start in playoff games, is abysmal. I think it's like 3 and 17 for the last like 20 games a rookie has started in the playoffs, like since the start of the NFL. I remember seeing some stat like that. So I would pull it up, but I don't want to look for it. But it's in that range where it's just rookie quarterbacks historically and statistically have really rough first time playoff games. So regardless of how good Jaden Daniels has been at the start of the season, I think when it comes to the playoffs, it's a completely different animal. Again, an animal that Baker Mayfield is very comfortable with playing with, which
I
is
totally, that's a good point. That's a great
and
point.
the Bucks going into this playoffs, they're the third highest ranked in total offense in the entire league. So again, they're offensively in the same class as the Ravens, as the Bills, as the Eagles. They're with as the Lions. They're a better offense than the Chiefs, than the Chargers, than the Texans. Then I think they're even a better offense than the Bills right now.
Yeah.
So
I don't
this
know about the
Bucks team,
Vikings though, but still.
yeah, this Bucks team is deadly. They're being led by Baker Mayfield, who's playing out of his
I
mind.
want to see
Almost a
Baker hoist the trophy.
72%,
Baker hoist the trophy.
almost a 72% completion percentage,
You know what?
4,500 yards,
You know what?
41 touchdowns, 16
If Baker
interceptions.
ended up winning the Super Bowl, I would look back and I'd be like, you know what? I'm not shocked because look what he's done against the good teams.
Yeah. I'm not shocked, and honestly, I'm not mad because I like Baker Mayfield. I like how much of an asshole he is. It reminds me of myself. So it's but yeah, I think on next week's show we should do after the wild card round where it's like the teams left, taking out my team obviously. I think we should do a ranking of which teams we want to see the most win and why. Like, I
That's
think that
good.
would be fun.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Uh, but let's
Last but
move
not
on.
least,
Yeah, we're both picking the Buccaneers in that game.
here's
Casino
the controversial one. I feel like between you and me. So we got Vikings and Rams on Monday night, 5 p.m.
in Arizona.
in Arizona because the Rams game is you got to move there. Um, I was going to pick the Rams. I was wholeheartedly going to pick the Rams, and a lot has to do with Stafford is a great quarterback that is playoff ready. He knows how to win in the playoffs. Same with Sean McVay. He's a great coach. He knows what he's doing in the playoffs. They're both Super Bowl winners. That's a big thing, especially when you have Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. My daughter's in her room now, so she didn't freak out. And I was going to pick the Rams. However, this is no longer a home game. And there probably was going to be more Viking fans anyway, but this is not a home game. It's not their home field. Being a neutral site, which sucks for a playoff home game, something that you worked for all season. And then now, unlike the Chargers, LA Rams are, it's more central to the LA that I think this might be in their heads a lot more of everything they've had to deal with. Maybe not personally, like where the fires have affected them via the fire, but traffic, dealing with other loved ones or people they know, friends, that this is going to be on their mind a little bit more than just a normal day. So I was going to pick the Rams, but I think I'm going to lean towards the Vikings. And I know what you're going to talk about. You're going to talk about Sam Darnold has not played in the playoffs, and that's fine. And then that Lions Vikings game was like a playoff game interview because it was for the 1 seed to the 5 seed. But this is where my rebuttal on that's going to be is you say that so that game was like a playoff game. Well, guess what? The Vikings, typically when you lose a playoff game, you are done, right? You are done. You don't get another chance. Well, I think Sam Darnold and the Vikings can learn from that Lions loss and treat it as a playoff game, which it felt like a playoff game, and move forward from that. So, yes, I know Stafford is the quarterback that's been in the playoffs, won a Super Bowl, but I wouldn't knock Sam Darnold. He's played really good under high pressure all season. Yes, they lost that game, but the Lions did get some key pieces back on defense. So, and even with that, Jared Goff threw some bad picks and like he didn't look 100% in that game. So the Vikings defense is still looking really good. So I'm going to go with the Vikings on this. Yes, with the rookie to the playoffs with Sam Darnold, but I'm going to go with Sam Darnold. It's going to be a close game. If the Rams won, I wouldn't be shocked because that's who I really wanted to pick. But I'm just going to take the mental aspect of not being a home game anymore. Now they have to travel, which they weren't expecting to. So the chaos for them is going to be a little too much for them against the Vikings. And I think the Vikings fans are going to travel better to Arizona than they would LA. That's just my weird take on it.
Yeah. Well, regardless of if this game was played in LA or Arizona, I think it's going to be majority Vikings fans, probably 60% to 70%, just because I feel like they feel like this is one of the best teams they've ever had, on par with the Randall Cunningham 15-1 team from 98. So, uh,
UNLV.
yeah. Also, parallel to the what is it team they had a couple years ago, led by the guys whose name I always forget, Case Keenum, where this feels like a better version of that team. Obviously, Sam Darnold feels like a better, younger version of him. But again, yes, what you're saying is true, where I now have reservations about Sam Darnold playing in a playoff game, much like I did with Jaden Daniels when we talked about the Commanders, because usually your first playoff start is a rough start because, again, it's a different animal in the playoffs. But when you talk about that Vikings defense, they finished the league as the the fifth
Fifth.
lowest point per game rating for their opponent. So the Rams are going to meet a very good defense in the playoffs. Stafford in the playoffs, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a 67% completion percentage, and almost 2,500 yards. So and that's in 8 games. So he's almost guaranteed to throw 2 touchdowns,
Yeah,
maybe an interception
I
in
think
every
it's
game.
literally that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say I could see it being a 2 touchdown, 1 interception game for him, but still putting up some good numbers. But
Yeah.
I think that I just think that the connection that Sam Darnold has with Addison, Jefferson, and I don't trust the Rams defense
Yeah.
as much. And that's saying weird as much as the Lions defense, but like I said, the Lions got some important pieces back, and one of those pieces shut down Jefferson, and the other one was able to put pressure on Sam Darnold. So
Yeah, they showed the key for the Lions was to just all out blitz Sam Darnold and give him no time to throw, and then just do single man coverage on the outside with both Addison and Jefferson. But again, that was with
and
a
those are things
Lions
you can work on.
defense. Well, yes. And also, that was with the Lions defense that's getting guys back, that has a good defensive coordinator who's been holding that banged up defense together with whatever sticks, like third and fourth stringers and all that kind of stuff. The Rams defense has not been good all season, and they are currently ranked at the end of the season as the 26th best defense in the league. So I don't think they're going to be able to have that same game plan that the Lions so perfectly executed a week ago, but I
Perfectly.
think they're going to try. And I think that Jefferson is going to make them pay for it. So going against my better judgment and just going on vibes alone, Casino, I am picking the Vikings to win this game in on the road.
This one's a tricky this one was a tricky one. This was gonna be my upset pick, my only upset pick,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's tough for me to pick the Rams with everything going on down in LA.
Yeah, I do think that's a good point, that this might be just on their minds and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
I mean, hell, just the
against
honestly, just the air. They're
yeah,
having to breathe in that air for multiple days. So, yeah, that's where I'm gonna have it. I do like Sam Darnold, and I want him to win a couple games.
yeah.
Um,
And again, if it's the Rams next round and the first round matchup ends up being the Rams Lions, I don't think anybody's going to complain about that. I think that'll also be a
no, I think these playoffs are gonna be real fun. The only game I don't care anything about is the Chargers Texans.
Yeah, which is
And then
why they put it as the first one
yeah,
Saturday
and
afternoon.
then
Yep,
after that, honestly, I
kinda into
every
all of them. Yeah.
every matchup through the entire playoffs, I would be excited to see.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when on that note, Casino, it is time for our only sports
Yeah.
podcast, Power Rankings. We're gonna try to only do about 20 minutes of these and kind of blow through them because
Yeah.
mostly
I'd
because
say
we
15.
already
I'd say 15. Yeah, we're gonna have to go through. Again, I do now finding that screw in my tire. As soon as the wife gets home, I gotta drive across town to go to my tire shop with my guy.
Well, I was mostly saying because we already did them. But it is now time for the only sports podcast, Power
Ooh.
Rankings Wild Card Edition. And again, when I made these title cards yesterday, it was because I felt like death. So the theme is death. Uh and the first, and this is again just for playoff teams. So I had Casino list his playoff teams in order, but we're only starting at 9. So this is our top 9 teams in the playoffs going into the playoffs. And this is much different than our other ones for this season because this is an accumulation of the entire regular season going into the playoffs. This is not just what they did last week because obviously most of these teams were sitting people. So, with that being said, our wild card number 9 pick for Casino to start out with is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Baker gonna bake. Baker gonna bake. Sorry, that's dumb. But I'm going Baker Mayfield because we talked about how he's done in the playoffs um, with the Browns, and it's crazy to say that he's done that with the Browns.
I know.
Yeah, right. And man, they are kicking themselves in the fucking face right now. Pardon my French. Um, but I like Baker, and I like what they're doing. Again, they're going to sit at 9 for me because they are too hot and cold. Um, and I regardless of me having them winning, I still am going to put them at 9 respectively because they are hot and cold, but that doesn't have any judgment on, what I think they're going to end up doing in this game.
Yes. And the theme, for those who can't see behind it, is a graveyard that is Baker's sitting in. And if we're ever buried in a graveyard, Casino, we would hope people would visit us, which brings us to my number 9. Somebody is visiting our grave. And I have in the grave the number we just talked about him when we talked about the Vikings Rams game. I have the Rams at number 9. Why I have the Rams at number 9, I love their offense, but I can't put them higher than 9 because they have the 26th ranked defense in the league.
Oh yeah,
I
I
think,
have them at my 12. I have them at
yeah,
my 12.
yeah, you have them second from the bottom, which honestly I can't
Third from the
argue
bottom.
with. They are only 9th on my list based on 3 things. That is their receiving group of Nakua and Cup, which
Who could have thought?
outside of what is it, the Eagles receiving duo and probably the Vikings receiving duo would probably be right there in that top 3 mix. And you
Totally.
can argue all day which of those 3 is the best one, but they're
I
still
would
in the
agree.
conversation. Uh, I really like what Kyron Williams has done this season. 316 attempts, a yard shy of 1,300 yards, and then 14 rushing touchdowns on the season. So the Rams finally have a running game, which they never had with Jared Goff. And then Matthew Stafford, again, he's been phenomenal since he came to the Rams. They won a
Yeah.
Super Bowl, and he's turned out to be a really good playoff quarterback. So in that
I've always
first
liked
round
him.
matchups,
Always
yeah,
liked him.
we've always loved him, especially since he did
Loved it.
that
You're right.
fake.
I loved him. I've always loved him.
Yes, especially since he did that fake spike to beat my hated Cowboys.
Oh
That
my
was the
gosh,
moment I fell in
that's
love.
one of
Yeah.
the greatest plays in football history for me.
Oh, I love it. But yeah, so that's why, and
Because
that's
his own team didn't even know he was doing it.
that made it so great. But also that is one of those things where that's why everybody's picking the Rams to upset the Vikings because of Stafford. Oh, and then the third thing is Sean McVay. He's a great coach. He's one of the best coaches in the NFL, so you can never really count against him. Your number 8 Casino is the Los Angeles Chargers.
Love it. We talked about it earlier. Justin Herbert just looks poised under the coaching of Harbaugh. So I like him a lot. I like this team. It is very old school football where they're going to beat you with their defense and then just wear you out. Just wear you out. So Herbert doesn't have to be absolutely outstanding in the air. They're just getting a ground pound and just get the ball slowly moving, kill the clock, burn as much clock as possible. I like this team, and I said it all year. They're one of the teams that I could see being the best team that is not going to win a Super Bowl. And now I could just put the Packers there with them.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I
And
love them.
my number 8, very similar to yours, Casino, because it's the exact same one. And I also have the LA Chargers at, I hate calling them the LA Chargers. I still wish it was the San Diego
It's the
Chargers.
San Diego Chargers.
But I have them at number 8.
It's the St. Louis Rams.
Yeah, I wish all them didn't move. But yeah, I think the Chargers, again, this all comes down to pretty much what I said about the Rams, except switch out receiving core for defense. The Chargers defense finished the league as the 11th total defense in the league. They have Herbert at quarterback, who again doesn't have much playoff experience, but the one playoff game he did play in, he looked good at it. There wasn't, and again, when quarterbacks make their first playoff game, usually they're bad. So, and then again, I really like the coaching staff. And I think in the playoffs, coaching matters. That's why Bill Belichick, that's why Andy Reid have always been great, coaches in the playoffs.
Could you
So,
just, I've talked about it many times, but I still just fantasize of the idea of having Bill Belichick and Andy Reid being your two coaches. You have the best, one of the best, if not the best offensive coach of all time and the best defensive coach of all time. Oh,
yeah.
it would just be
No.
insane. Just be insane. And the
uh,
most winning, some of the most winningest coaches of all time. So,
yeah.
oh.
Next up, Casino, your number 7, the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, they're pretty high on my list, and it's mainly because I was really happy that they made the playoffs and Jaden Daniels is going to get Rookie of the Year. The reason why I have them so high, and yes, I know I have the Bucks beating them, but I gotta give it to Jaden Daniels for the season he's had. Yes, there's a minor slump that he had mid to late season. However, what he's done against outstanding defenses, especially again, we've saw what happened against your Eagles. We've talked about it. Yeah, yes, Jalen Hurt went out and all that, and the defense got tired, but it's still the number one defense in the league, and Jaden Daniels was able to go and win that game. And he's shown that he can do it when he needs to do it. So I like this team. I like what they have done this season. They can beat good teams. So I'm gonna leave it at that. That's where they're at. But I don't have them beating the Bucks. I have the Bucks just coming in and surprising and annihilating them.
Yeah, which is weird that you rank the Commanders ahead of the Buccaneers.
I know. I know. We're going off an entire season. And then I said the
That's true.
Bucks are the Bucks are a hot and cold team. And I just like Baker better in the playoffs than a rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, going into the season. And I trust the grittiness of the Bucks over the grittiness of the Commanders. That's my reasoning on it. But in a season, I like what the Commanders have done in a whole more
Yeah.
than
I do not have the Commanders on my list,
I know
and
you
I
don't.
do not have them winning in the first round. I have my number 7 beating them in the first round, which is, of course, the best picture of an NFL quarterback to ever exist. And that is also Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at
And
number
just the
7.
and it's where the mic is also perfectly on his shirt. Like, it just looks great.
It's a great picture. For those
I
listening,
hope he has that framed in his house.
I might, if we might get it framed for the studio. That would actually be a
Ooh,
really funny picture.
my
to have
wife just
framed
pulled
there.
in. Noise.
Oh, but yeah, I have number 7. I have the Buccaneers. I think, especially the last month of the season and really all season, they've kind of been just on point. The wins the Bucks have are against the number 1 seed in the NFC, the number 2 seed in the NFC. They blew out the Chargers, an overtime, coin toss away from potentially beating the number one seed in the AFC. They come to play when they play the big boys, and they're the definition of the team that kind of plays to their competition. That's why you see them having rough games against what, a 4 team or a 4 win Saints team, and then turning it on against the Lions and the Eagles and the elite teams in this league. So I don't think that ends in the playoffs. And I think right now they're the team in the NFC playoffs. As an Eagles fan, I'm most terrified of, especially because Baker Mayfield has had our numbers since he's been with the Bucks and is just beaten us now 2 times in a row. I think maybe 3 times in a row. So next up, we have your number 6 pick, Casino, which is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens played the Steelers in the first round. So yeah, the Steelers not in your top 9.
No, they are definitely not. They're actually, I believe, second to last. I think they're 13. But I have the Ravens, and what I like about the Ravens, as you said it, their defense has started to figure it out, which
Top
is
10,
good.
finishing top 10 in the league, which
Top
is
10 in the league.
crazy because they
And
were
their
30th at one point.
their
Yeah.
secondary has gotten a lot better. And then the missing piece, I truly think, and I think we all think, is for Lamar Jackson in the playoffs is having a good running back so he didn't have to do it all on his own with Derrick Henry. I like this team, and I think this team can go far. I think this team can win a Super Bowl, especially now that that defense is looking better. So I like where they're at. I do have a few other teams obviously ahead of them, and we got to roll through these so I can get going. So that's what I'm going to say there.
Yeah. My number 5, let's go. Or I'm sorry, no, my number 6 is the Minnesota Vikings. And again, yes, this is a combination of the entire season. I think right now the Bucks are a better team. I think the Vikings are better than the Chargers or Rams, even though I think if the Rams upset the Vikings on Monday night or on Monday Night Football, I don't think anybody would be shocked just with how good the Rams have been playing, kind of, and just how we saw that Vikings Lions game go. So I still need to see Sam Darnold in the playoffs, but I'm still putting them number 6 on the list over what they've done this entire season, which is be really great, have a really great defense, the resurgence of Sam Darnold, who at one point or at multiple points during the season was a legitimate MVP candidate. And if you said he was, nobody would like laugh you out of the building. So I think
Oh
that
yeah, his numbers are outstanding, and they ended outstanding. So
yeah, and except for that Lions Vikings game, I think he would still be in contention for like, hey, maybe Sam Darnold finishes 4th in the playoff rankings. Who knows? Or maybe he might even jump Saquon. Next up, Casino, your pick after the Ravens was the very team we just talked about, which was the Minnesota Vikings, and then your number 3 team was the Buffalo Bills. So you can talk about both of those.
is that 3? Is that how we did that?
Well,
Yeah,
I did 2 for yours, 4 and 3. So
got it.
the
Okay,
Vikings
yeah.
first because I was just
No,
talking
no,
about the
no, no.
Vikings.
You
And
have
then
my 5 and 4. This is 5 and 4.
yes.
Got it. Yeah. So Vikings, Sam Darnold looking great. Yes, they just lost to the Lions. I talked about all of that. Reasons why I still think they're going to be a good playoff team is because they figured out what the weakness is for Sam Darnold, and now they can move forward. He got the jitters out. That was a big time game, and I think just this team is too good for them to mess up 2 times in a row, especially against a team with the Rams that is a great team, but just not better than the Vikings. So I'm going to have the Vikings there. They're good, but I can't put them in front of these next 4 teams who are just better. Just
Yeah.
better. So with that being said, I have the Bills sitting 4. I love this team. I like that Cook has definitely stepped up and has made that running game and basically doing what Derrick Henry's doing for Lamar Jackson, where now Josh Allen doesn't have to run every single time. He's still running a lot, but he doesn't have to. Cook has had an outstanding season. This was a missing piece. We talked about it before the season started. I can remember it clear as day that when Cook went there, I'm like, this is going to help out this team tremendously. This is going to lessen the load for Josh Allen to make a playoff run that he could just never beat the Chiefs. I think this really helps out. And just like what I said for the Ravens, this might be the missing pieces. Finally, getting a running back that can dual or that you can hand off and do split with carries with your quarterback. So I like it. I like this team, but we'll see how they fare
Yeah.
until they beat the Chiefs. Until they beat the Chiefs, you can't be above the Chiefs, but in the playoffs. So we'll see how they can do.
Now to go for my 5-4, I have the Baltimore Ravens. Mine was all fans edition, so that is a Baltimore Ravens fan, in case you can't tell for those watching on the video. With the Ravens, again, we've talked about it all season. The defense was the question mark. They had a unbelievable number one offense, especially rushing wise, obviously with the addition of Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers being out for the first game does scare me. Maybe not against the Steelers, because I think that'll be a run heavy game, and they've kind of already proven they can beat the Steelers, and with the Steelers team falling the way they have the past month or two of the season. But I do think that if the Zay Flowers injury lingers into the second round, where they're probably going to have to most likely play the Bills or a team like that, then it's cause for concern. But this
Oh,
Ravens
most
defense,
definitely.
yeah, this Ravens defense finishing as a top 10 is really a testament to just coaching and the other Harbaugh brother that gets so much credit in LA. So, yeah, the
And
Ravens,
don't dare ask us. We get Jim and John mixed up constantly.
I know. I think I'm finally okay with it, but I mean, it took basically the entire regular
I just
season
call
for me to
him
figure
just
it out.
call him the Harbaugh. That's all.
Yeah, the Harbaugh brothers, both of them are good coaches. My number 4 pick, Casino, might be a shocker to you, but it is the Detroit Lions. And again, I think they are number 4 strictly because their defense is one of the worst defenses in the league, or in the playoff. Well, in the league, yes, but especially in the playoffs. So they're going to have to win in a shootout for every game, which again is something they can do. I'm not saying they can't do that. I'm just saying I think the teams ahead of them have better defenses, have as good, if not better offenses than them when you look at certain other teams that I have in front of them. So, yeah, I'm picking the Lions at 4, but I think they are still one of the best teams in the league and could potentially go to the Super Bowl as the number 1 NFC team. So, with Casino, who stepped away for a moment, I will just move to my number 3, which is also Casino's number 4, and that is the Buffalo Bills. Now, again, when we previewed the playoffs on our previous if you're listening to the full episode previous in this episode, if you're just watching this clip, go look at the clip where we talk about the Bills Broncos game. I think the Broncos will upset the Bills, but that is mostly just because I just think the Bills play to their competition, much like what we talked about with the Buccaneers, and kind of play down to when they, have a team they should just beat. So the Bills should annihilate the Broncos, but that hasn't been the story of the Bills all season. That being said,
That's such a great photo of a Bills guy.
I know. That being said, I do think the Bills have a great offense. Probably, obviously, the second, no lower than the third best quarterback in the league in Josh Allen. If you're a Lamar Jackson guy or not, but he's going to win MVP. This is the season where everybody, including myself, thought they would take a step back, and they're still finished the season as the second seed in the AFC. Again, all they have to do is get past what is it, Kansas City, and they're in the Super Bowl. So
You pass Kansas City and you can win this whole thing.
yeah. Next up, Casino, your number 3, and that is, we already did that. Your number 3 was the Buffalo Bills. Your number 2
Two.
seed is the Philadelphia Eagles. Or no,
This is my 3.
this is your 3, and then your number 2 is Kansas City.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
my 3, I've got the Eagles. What can I say? The Eagles, they're just an outstanding team from top to bottom. They're in almost in top 5 in every single category. If not already, they are top 5 in every category.
yeah.
I'm sure you have the stats on that. They're outstanding. This team is going to be very tough to beat. Saquon having the year that he's had is just outstanding, and it makes so much pressure, takes so much pressure off of Jalen Hurts. And yes, I know he's coming back from his concussion. That worries me a little bit. But what this team has done, they sit there at 3 for me. And then Of course, then we have the evil empire sitting at 2 with the Chiefs. What can I say? You can't knock them. They're the best team in the NFC, or my daughter went potty. The best team in the AFC, and yes, the Chiefs are the Chiefs.
Here. Well, yeah, hold on with the Chiefs because they're obviously on my list. And then my number 2 pick, I have the Eagles. There's an Eagles fan right there. Great costume again. So I have the Bills slightly behind the Eagles, and the Eagles 2 spots above the Lions for the simple reason of defense, right? The Eagles finished the season as the number 1 defense in the league. As Casino said, top 5 in almost every category when it comes to defense. They've only allowed 33 touchdowns all year. They allow the other team's
Outstanding.
offense to only have 278 yards, which is almost 50 yards less than the number 2 defense in terms of yards. So I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is the best Eagles team of my football watching lifetime. I don't remember much about the Eagles teams in the 90s. I really started watching the NFL when I was 10. So really in
That
my
was mine
football
too.
watching,
10.
yeah, my football watching lifetime, go from the year 2000, like 1999, 2000 to now.
2000 was for me, and that just so happened to be when Brady started.
Yeah. And for me, it was, I remember watching the draft when I picked my team, and it was the Eagles selecting Donovan McNabb. And I was like, this is my team. So that's kind of a short origin story because we both grew up in Vegas. So obviously there was no Vegas team in here.
Yeah, I have some family ties to Massachusetts via my dad's side. So that's both my parents are from towns, my mom from here, that have no ties to any teams. So some
Yeah.
people on my dad's side were from Massachusetts. So that's how I became a New England sports fan.
No, my family was from Chicago, but they weren't really a sports family. So
Chicago.
thank God I didn't choose to be a Bears fan.
Chicago.
But yeah, when it comes to the Eagles, this is the best Eagles team I've seen, and that includes the 2 teams that went to the Super Bowl.
Perfect time. My son's
Or no, that includes the 3 teams in my lifetime that have went to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they won it the one time. So, yeah, including all those Andy Reid teams, I legitimately think this is the best Eagles team. If they do not at least make it to the Super Bowl, I will probably be more devastated than I've ever been at an Eagles team not reaching the Super Bowl than this one. Our last picks, when there is a death casino, according to most religions, you either go to a heaven or a hell, and your team is ascending the steps to get into the pearly gates. You have the Lions as your number 1 team for the power rankings. Why do you think the Lions, after this entire regular season, are the best team in the league?
I'm going the Lions just because they're starting to get some of their defense players back. And on paper, this was a much better team than the Lions team last year. I will put your cape on. Sorry, it's ours. It's the end of the show. We know it's breaking down. So the Lions are. Their defense is finally getting some pieces back. The offense is legit, and I like Dan Campbell and his coaching style, and I like Ben Johnson and his coaching style. So this just all works, and I think they're the best team in the league, and they're going to be tough to beat. I got to deal with this. So go.
My number 1 pick. Obviously, they've been the best team all season. Nobody understands why. You look stat-wise, they're probably the worst version of themselves, but they're still going for the three-peat. Only have 1 legit loss on their entire season because obviously they sat everybody for last week's game. When there is a heaven, there is also a hell. And the hell all of us non-Chiefs fans are living in right now is the end times because the Chiefs are most likely going back to the Super Bowl. Will they get there? I think so. My preseason pick was Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl, which is very much alive. And I think, honestly, that will be the Super Bowl matchup. I'm sticking to that. I also have the conspiracy theory on my side where the logo for
And
the
man,
Super Bowl emblem is green and red. So
dude,
it's on my side.
I
Casino loves when I do the
it's just so scary. This is terrifying. The fact that like you have Taylor Swift like blinking with the Grim Reaper behind her, and it's just like the most menacing like ha 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 laugh ever.
Yeah,
Uh,
because that's is how we all feel. It's
they all have that ha 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 laugh.
much
Even
like
him. Like
much like death, the Kansas City Chiefs come for all of us. It's inevitable. They're going to be in the Super Bowl.
that's
And
funny.
on that note, this has been the Only Sports Podcast. I'm Will. That's Casino over there. We will see you. I will see you Sunday night for the solo show. And then Casino and I will see you on Tuesday after a wild weekend of football, not only college, which Texas and Ohio State starts in about an hour from when we're ending this show. And then, yeah, we have the NFL playoffs. And yeah, so we'll see you on Tuesday's show. This has been the Only Sports Podcast. Will Casino. Adios.